You've already watched at least one other video on this. It can't possibly work as the general voice you hear being shouted the loudest. Others of us are having a very hard time dealing with this, but I'm not so eager to jump on this thought train. If you haven't already talked about this with a guild, the community, or some friends, then like me, I'm sure your head has had more than enough to say about it when alone. You remember all the games that remotely tried this and disaster struck at every turn. Focusing in on my 3 personal reasons why it's going to be a great combat system and possibly the future for all MMOs, and then slamming it down with a counterexample that unfortunately we all know to be too true. Part 1. Anime Future. This type of combat is going to be the future of gaming for MMOs for generations to come. Really, Liddell? Pretty bold statement for a guy that's always on the fence. I know. Sounds a little dumb and cliche, but the truth is we know it is only because of every damn anime, many based many years in the future. Main examples that we all know and love being Log Horizon, Sword Art Online, Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, Overlord, and How Not to Summon a Demon Lord jumping on in. Maybe a little too similar to Overlord, but that's definitely for another video. We have a hard time though deducing which moves are action based and which are traditional based. By the way, if you haven't watched all those, please pause this video and go watch them right now. A common move in anime is for a character to fight an enemy one-on-one, defeating them with somewhat ease, pounce into the air, and while landing, annihilating 3 enemies, only to turn and take out another at a distance. Breaking this down, the first 1v1 could be either action or tab targeting. However, the pounce into the air at a group would lean towards action, unless a target was selected pre-pounce and it was a target in the center. The ranged fight at the end may seem traditional, select target and cast/attack, but an action-based game would also supply a nice aimed attack, be it spell or throwing knife, that would work just as well and may include a headshot for additional damage. Whether the protagonist in this case is using swords, guns, or magic, it's hard to determine what real game this could ever take place in until we meet the Ashes of Creation combat. While it is mainly theory crafting based on information Intrepid, and mainly Steven, has released through gameplay footage and panel discussions, if a game exists with a duality ability of not just having action and traditional play together, but also on the same command list, it would truly reinvent the wheel of what we understand as MMO combat and get us one step closer to our favorite animes. Maybe, instead of dreaming of being stuck there, we could actually bring those worlds one step closer sooner than we think. Part 2. Warrior Mage Balance Examples. You could think a mage mainly be tab target, Final Fantasy XIV type of feeling, casting small and large spell chains. And a warrior or fighter class would be action, combo smashing buttons with perfect timing and finesse, Warframe cough. But the problem occurs realizing we've had both in both kinds of games. Regardless of the weapon equipped at any given time in Star Wars Galaxies and its somewhat predecessor Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, you were always a warrior class, everything else being healers, tanks, enchanters, bards, mages, and even rogues were more of a subclass from your warrior overall class. It was a tab target galaxy far, far away, and it worked extremely well for it. Even as Jedi, heralded as the overlords of the game in the original Star Wars Galaxies, was pretty rare to go full out in a fight being able to only use force abilities in either title. Black Desert Online literally can't spell the title without the letters from the word action. Action, action, and more action combat. Not uncommon for people to play melee classes with the warrior-like focuses, but this game has magic literally out the ass. So much magic you can obviously play as a wizard or one of their knockoff names. Balancing wizards in an MMO for an action game I suppose is not that hard to imagine, but when they're in the same PvP as the warriors or rogues, one could imagine their chance of survival should be slim 9 out of 10 times. Not a few, not some. The majority by far, for whatever reason, are balanced for 1 versus 1, so mages typically have a fair chance regardless of the situation. And I just want to emphasize, as somebody that typically plays mage classes, I think we're better off at ranged and in group things, so the 1v1 I don't enjoy too much. I think we can say that while traditional is ideal for slower connections, I wouldn't think Ashes would have it tilted towards action-based combat, knowing many won't be able to keep up, because yeah, we can be told be the healer, mage, bard, summoner, or enchanters when this is the case, but I seriously doubt everyone with a slow connection will want to pick up a real weapon and fight on the front lines. Part 3. Cooldowns rule all, many skills equal many hours of play. Cooldowns and the amount of skills allowed at once will most likely be the thing that will be our #1 focus with an action tab target system in place. Cooldowns are wait times for your abilities. Watch Log Horizon to definitely learn a lot more about that. An action ability isn't inherently stronger than a tab target ability just because you usually don't need a target to cast. I'm not actually sure where this argument is coming from. I can see the confusion when most action-based MMOs make you feel godly, mainly due to the flashiness of the combat compared to traditional out-of-the-boxes, but it's really not true. Whether action or tab targeting, abilities do heavy damage or light damage. Gaming law regulates all large damage attacks require long cooldowns, while light damage has quick cooldowns or none at all. Based on this understanding of the laws of games, it's very hard to dictate without knowing the exact abilities being used whether an action or tab target fighter would best the other. Number of usable abilities is comparatively related to the hours able to invest in the game, especially long term. Though it's very convenient for casual gamers to play with more hardcore players and so much easier to jump in when your active abilities is not taking up half your worries and you don't have to think or memorize anything complicated, because why would anybody playing a fantasy or sci-fi game want anything complicated in their MMO? You're pulling away from your own damn experience, people. God, developers, the hell's wrong with you? Okay. Ashes is literally doing the abilities better than anyone else. Why? Because the equipment itself holds abilities as well, meaning a cloak of invisibility can literally be just that. An ability on your hotbar that's activated when you choose. On top of the abilities you will have, these will be altered by a subclass and abilities being usable per weapon. It's important to understand the subclass does not add more abilities, it simply modifies existing abilities. As in, a main fighter subclass as a healer may gain heals on strikes. However, as a main fighter subclass mage, your hits will likely have a magic elemental damage. Cooldowns are wait times for your abilities. If you want to learn more about that kind of stuff, definitely watch Log Horizon. An action ability isn't inherently stronger than a traditional just because you usually don't need a target to cast. I'm not actually sure where this argument is coming from. I can see the confusion when most action-based MMOs make you feel godly, mainly due to the flashiness of the combat compared to traditional out-of-the-boxes, but not really true. Whether action or tab targeting, abilities do heavy damage or light damage. Gaming law regulates all large damage attacks require long cooldowns, while light damage has quick cooldowns and sometimes not at all. So what does this all mean? This means your class abilities, weapon abilities, and equipment abilities you have 3 separate ability pools you can dictate your fighting style from. And what stops you from switching things up even in the field with a simple weapon or equipment swap? Bringing your boots of levitation is always a good idea for an adventure, but if you're headed to the volcanoes, the fire-resistant boots will probably do nicely in your bag. Kind of funny to think the death of MMOs came about the same time the casual MMO ideology did. That's why I think it's fair to say Ashes is probably doing things the right way. But the big counterexample to it all? You could theoretically be better with a better connection. You could theoretically have a higher DPS with a higher connection. You could theoretically have a higher heal rate with a higher connection. You could theoretically have a higher buff and debuff rate with a higher connection. Because this game isn't going to be balanced for every class to 1v1 every class, you would be completely decimated by a number of classes if you are not 100% combat focused, as your opponent probably is as well. And guess what? It's balanced for groups. So if a group has a better connection than another group, well, let's say we'll probably be able to see where they used to be virtually standing, to say the least. But lag will make the discrepancy of connection prejudice even worse, that if both players are using action skills, and even more so if they're using traditional. But guess what? Lag is the problem in every online game. Hell, it's always the problem, always! We've all thought we were cool as shit riding through Los Santos with nothing but 5 stars over your head and nothing but lights flashing behind you, only to have another player rubber banding when a character is moving in a forward directional movement and periodically returning to a previous point of movement only to rebound back to where they originally were over and over and over and over and over again. with their crappy Cheval Surge to go through an intersection ahead of you, only to splice back in front of you right as you go through, smashing the shit out of your car. Yeah, police catch you and introduce you to the long of the law while your electric car buddies drive off, rubber banding, but no dents, no scratches, and that's only in action-based games. Okay, so imagine when you actually have resets and the time and framing is really mattering on the cooldown. What we can conclude at the very least, whether or not lag is a problem in the beginning or persists for those with bad connections throughout a game's existence, it is not the determiner of whether the hybrid combat style of Ashes of Creation will work. If anything, it's well overdue for somebody to finally step up and do a hybrid system right. Intrepid are super heavyweights in the industry, and they're going in swinging every day. Things may be unbalanced through alpha and beta, but speaking what actual release could be isn't theory crafting, it's being arrogant. And since alpha and beta aren't releases, no matter how much some games lie about their alphas or the hate-trained communities jump on titles actually in testing stages, as content creators, alpha testers, beta testers, and to one day be the beaters, it's a goal of ours, or at least mine, to help during the testing phase as much as I can to make sure the action tab targeting combat system feels not just good, but as perfect as it can get for every class. As somebody that grew up playing MMOs, I couldn't want any more for the genre to make an actual return with Ashes at the lead. If anything, it's going to be hard for most people to wrap their heads around this combat system simply because of how new the idea is, even though all of our animes have had this in place for years already.